The story begins under a blue sky with slightly overcast clouds, and pink petals floating through the air illustrate the scene where two characters stand on the school balcony. In a dialogue worthy of a Mexican telenovela, the girl confesses that she's had feelings for the boy in front of her for 2 years. In response, he stares back with a bewildered expression, like a surprised Pikachu. Apparently, he has no idea who the person in front of him is and makes a point to mention it. Peering through his fog glasses, he's talking to Park Rosa, at the peak of her 18-year-old youth, the female lead of this mess, so she's not just anyone. Considering that, Rosa uses her protagonist powers to break the fourth wall and inform us that her 2-year unrequited love has just gone down the drain, while the guy, not wanting to face the girl's bitter posture, leaves the balcony in a cold sweat without even offering a decent goodbye. As a tear rolls down from Rosa Parks' left eye, we know her fragile little heart has been shattered. Kneeling in a gesture of deep suffering, she thought she'd be fine if she were honest with herself and trusted her feelings, only to find out the guy didn't even know who she was. Faced with the harsh reality crashing down on her head like a uranium brick, the girl cries from every possible orifice, while the growing shame running through her veins gives her a sudden urge to throw everything to the wind. Much like when your mom screams she'll disappear one day and no one will miss her because you forgot to do the dishes. But do you think that's the end of the story? Think again, sucker. There's always room for one more little drama in the life of a bitter young woman. In Rosa's case, just when her emotional TNT was ticking down from 9 to 7 seconds in exactly 2 seconds, what Miss Rosanya didn't expect was for her school to suddenly explode out of nowhere. The explosive goes boom, and the school collapses without warning. Rosa begs for help, telling the Lord Jesus she was just kidding when she said she wanted to blow everything up, but it seems luck wasn't going to knock on her door today. The clueless students around her begin to notice the deafening noise taking over their senses, as Rosa is thrown from the balcony by the blast. One of these students, Doryong, jumps in without hesitation to help. Meanwhile, Rosanya falls in slow motion toward her inevitable death, wondering if her demise really had to be so pathetic, spinning in the air like a lost paper airplane, right after being rejected by some ungrateful jerk. However, Doryong prevents Rosa Parks' tragedy with a strange ability that glows golden from his hands, which he uses to block the debris that would have crushed the poor girl. Not only that, but if we look closely at the bottom of this enormous panel that we had to divide into several takes, we can see that the guy was actually flying. Yes, he didn't just act as an umbrella for the concrete storm, but he also prevented our heroine from becoming a pile of ground beef after a motorbike courier was hit by a truck. After safely placing the girl back on the ground, the flying student listens to Rosa's heartfelt thanks for his unexpected help. What's more, this guy is a total gentleman, asking if the rescued girl got hurt in any way. Rosa Parks, still terrified by the situation, assures him she's fine, right as the brave Doryong is called away from another corner and rushes off to save the rest of the day. It was a woman in a peculiar uniform, pointing toward an alley where someone had gone, and scolding the guy for wearing his school uniform while on duty. Stunned, Rosa Parks is drawn without eyes in this panel, overwhelmed by too much information in such a short time. However, once she regains her emotional composure, she collapses to her knees again, but not from pain this time. This time, it's because she's fallen head over heels for the Korean Superman who just crossed her path. 2 years later, a young lady named Sei was streaming to her devoted fans after a long hiatus from the screen. She told her frenzied chat that she had finally finished her exams, when some idle viewer reminded the girl to wear her watch. However, the reminder was justified because, indeed, she needed that accessory securely on her wrist. After all, it was an important piece of equipment for special agents like Sei, and she wasn't supposed to take it off, not even during a shower, as it indicated the exact time when agents should use their abilities. In fact, as the president of the Special Agents Headquarters had already said, Sei not only needed to wear the watch at all times, but also had to learn to use it in a controlled manner, not like the psycho lunatic she usually was. Nervous about her delicate mental state, Sei explained to her fans that special abilities were used as weapons, which is why they should only be used during work hours. Displaying the watch, she told them that if it rang, it meant heads would roll. And speaking of which, the girl remembered an appointment and abruptly left the live stream without further explanation. On the other side of the city, a crowd gathered around a building, and people pointed to the top and filmed as if they were on a safari, though the situation was even wilder. Someone was teetering at the edge of the balcony. A guy screamed that Palmeiras still didn't have a world title and warned that if anyone approached, he'd chop up the hostage he was holding. The mysterious woman who had summoned Doryong to the alley now responded through a megaphone, telling the criminal to come down right away if he wanted to reduce his sentence. At the same time, internally, she gritted her teeth, wondering when those superpowered knuckleheads would finally show up. However, just like in a good superhero movie, the first heroine made her appearance, and it was none other than our beloved Sei, flaunting her K-pop star look for all to see, being cheered by the crowd and promising autographs only after lunch. The fiery super gives her colleague a scolding because she had told Sei not to stream today and to be ready for action, while Sei justified that she had hopped on the bus as soon as she heard about the situation. The fiery one snaps that this isn't her mom's house, grumbling that even Ki Jungi hadn't shown up for this mess. Sei asks about the twins, but apparently they were in the middle of exams and had to miss work. Setting that aside, the woman orders the heroine to take a look and use her clairvoyant power to see what's about to happen, as detailed as in the Final Destination franchise. Sei takes a peek and confirms that the two maniacs will fall together and turn into pancakes in 10 seconds. With that, she begins counting down, and the boss flies straight up to the top of the building, cursing the girl for not arriving earlier when things weren't as dire. Using her fluidization ability, Special Agent Jang Xian shoots upward toward the criminal, who tries to warn once again that they should keep their distance, but he loses his balance and ends up tumbling, causing both himself and the poor hostage to fall. Faced with the facts, Jang Xian hurries to clean up the mess before it's too late, but she feels she won't be able to manage. However, once again, Doryong steps in to restore order, freezing the fools in midair with one hand behind his back, like a noble waiter serving a hungry customer. Jang Xian, on the other hand, was starving for a solution, and that's exactly what the blonde hottie delivered in style, packing up the thug for the cop like she had ordered him on AliExpress. Jang Xian reminds him that he was supposed to be on vacation, but with his telekinesis and self-healing abilities, Han Doryong simply couldn't stay out of the action. Knowing full well how special he was, the guy offered to help the woman, who promptly declined and entered the building through a window. Around them, the crowd stood in awe, watching as the heartthrob landed on the ground in an extremely cool vibe. In that moment, the people forgot everything and rushed toward the hero. Someone in the crowd had an exam tomorrow, so they wanted to touch the guy, hoping it would bring them good luck, as if Doryong were a totem, a good luck charm, or even a god. But who is Han Doryong? First of all, we need to understand that the number of criminals with special abilities has skyrocketed. As we can all imagine, ordinary police forces can't handle this troublesome crew. Obviously, special criminals require special solutions, and that's how the Special Agents Headquarters was founded. After all, this is a crazy world where someone, even with just a single ability that defies the norm, can become an agent ready to defend society from these sinister lackeys. In Doryong's case, the guy was born under a lucky star. From birth, he had two abilities, and with them, he saved his school when he was still in elementary school. By middle school, he had saved the entire country. Without a doubt, he's the most special agent of them all, and the Republic of Korea is safe because this blessed individual exists. But of course, being a hero isn't just about being born with powers. To top it off, this Galaxy-class dude is also the hottest guy in Korea, not to mention his captivating charm and charisma. Without a doubt, with his unrivaled personality and stunning appearance, Doryong was more adored than K-pop idols. In the chaos of the crowded building, people trampled over each other to get a piece of the superhero and wondered why he was even there, as it had been publicly announced that the celebrity was on vacation. However, after witnessing the crime from his window at home, Doryong decided to swing by and casually rescue the hostage and subdue the armed suspect. Jang Xian wanted to know if the higher-ups had given him permission to use his powers, and he nonchalantly replied that the folks in charge loved that he was working even during his vacation. Hiding behind Jang, Sei popped out and commented that the handsome guy was going to blow up on Twitter, but not as a compliment. In fact, the girl was bitter because she wanted to be the one trending this week. Unfazed by the jealousy of his rivals, Doryong simply responded that Sei would get there if she worked hard enough. After all, as the rich cousin would say, there's no poverty that can withstand 14 hours of work, and if you work 24 hours a day, every day, maybe you'll become as successful as him. Assuming you don't die from burnout first, of course. With that said, the golden boy whistled nonchalantly like a cricket, while Jang tried to stop Sei before the cameras captured an unexpected agent showdown. Jang tried to slow down the cocky guy, asking if he hadn't been a little too overconfident lately, reminding him that at the start of his career, he used to let people fall from the sky like a kid dropping a glass bowl. Doryong didn't quite get where she was going, so she spelled it out for him. What would the arrogant hero do if he faced a villain stronger than him? Or maybe it wouldn't even be a villain. It could be a villainess too. We don't want to be accused of sexism here. Or worse, it could be a villainess with an insanely powerful ability, one that's beyond our comprehension, utterly, terrifyingly powerful. Regardless of that, Doryang was sure that would never happen, and the audacity of this prick gave Sei an uncontrollable urge to smack him. However, as the trio of tension tossed their words into the wind, the feared fourth element dropped onto the scene, having evaded the agent's senses and arrived unnoticed. There stood the most feared villain of the group, facing the heroes. Sei found the gas mask kind of tacky, which I personally agree with, but the villainess wasn't in the mood for jokes. She didn't even let Sei finish criticizing her outfit before she swooped in and landed a massive punch, sending the girl flying. Stunned, Doryang found himself face to face with a masked figure, and with a slight hint of fear on his face, he asked who this mysterious individual was. Setting aside that question, one thing is clear. If Sei kept flying without direction, she was bound to crash into a construction beam and break her appendix. Knowing this, Jang Xian rushed in the direction where the girl would fall and acted as an airbag, absorbing the impact as they smashed through the window of a building and into an unsuspecting office worker's desk. Completely ignoring this, Doryang commented that he might not know who this villain was, but if they were caught by the special agents, they'd face up to 3 years in jail and a fine of 30 million won. However, the villainess didn't seem too keen on staying behind bars. As soon as Doryang placed a hand on her shoulder to immobilize her, she escaped his grasp, surprising him with her boldness. Not one to let it slide, he hurled a park bench at her, but she caught the projectile with impressive skill and threw it back with equal force. The gas mask was blocking her vision, causing the bench to miss its mark and fly off course. But a splinter from the wooden piece struck the hero, leaving a small cut on his angelic face. In disbelief at what had just happened, Doryang glanced back, reflecting for a brief moment on the event. As his secondary ability healed the small cut, he lost his temper and began throwing everything he could find in the villainess's direction. Street lamps, traffic signs, a cat, a dog, anything. The entire city's metal debris hurtled toward the enemy, who seemingly lacked the reflexes to avoid getting crippled. Soon enough, a pile of street junk buried the villainess, making Doryang certain he had finally caught her. However, upon closer inspection, he was filled with the bitter realization that the villainess had escaped and vanished completely. A few hours later, Sei was recovering in a public hospital after suffering a lumbar fracture, so she took advantage of her downtime to check in with her many fans during her second live stream of the day. Everyone expressed concern for their idol, and she assured them she'd catch that wretched villain as soon as she completed her physical therapy. Meanwhile, Jang Xian was killing time playing Candy Crush on the rock-hard hospital chair. One idol viewer asked when their favorite heroine decided to enter the superhero biz, so Sei asked for all her followers' attention, lovingly called Pupsius, so they could hear this story. Sei began her super career back in elementary school, when she discovered her clairvoyance ability during a test. Having forgotten the wretched quadratic formula, the young girl was ready to throw in the towel and drop out to start an OnlyFans. However, an odd sensation overcame her, as though her future self was scolding her. Faced with this peculiar situation, her brain throbbed until she turned into the Joker, and it was in this Joker mode that Sei used her ability for the first time. Unfortunately, not yet fully aware of her own power, the future heroine ended up getting scolded hard, and her newly sprouted wings were clipped by the traditional school system, the true villain of this story. As Sei wrapped up the first chapter of her saga, she noticed the approach of the last person she wanted to see. Yes, it was none other than Han Doryang, bringing his worn-out face to the live stream and stealing all the attention for himself. Not only for his good looks, but also for his national hero status, Doryang was admired by the entire population, and Sei's fans knew the story by heart that Doryang was born with his abilities. Jang Xian, on the other hand, took a little longer to awaken her powers during a school sports competition. The twins had their revelation in kindergarten. But of course, this fictional Korea isn't just home to heroes. Those blessed or cursed with extraordinary abilities don't always choose the path of peace and justice. Some are drawn to the dark side, and others take so long to discover their powers that they may live an entire life in mundane routines until suddenly taken by this strange, superhuman capability. It's worth noting that the moment of awakening one's powers varies from person to person. For instance, the so-called late bloomers are the ones who take the longest to manifest their abilities. On that note, The renowned late bloomer who had just thrown the special agents into a frenzy remembered Doryong's touch on her shoulder. She placed her hand over the spot where he had touched her, and, brimming with emotion, Rosa Parks, now 20 years old, whispered that he had really touched her. In other words, as we can see, this will be the second case of unrequited love for this exemplary species of female simp. 2 years ago, little Rosanya spent her time stalking the social media accounts of the most famous heartthrob in South Korea. Like every other girl her age, she had a crush on the agent, and Rose's admiration was so immense that on that day, she decided to save one of his photos on her phone. For this and many other reasons, most of the honor ceremonies held for Han Doryong took place outdoors, precisely because his fans were the craziest people on earth, unwilling to let the cop live his life without hearing their loud screams and smelling their armpit stench in a large gathering. Speaking of which, the physical separation between the idol and his fans was so pronounced that the guy wore an isolation suit to keep the crowd at bay. At one of these ceremonies, Rosa Parks was there, sneaking through the masses trying to get as close as possible. After all, she wasn't just an ordinary admirer. Far from it. In Rosa's case, she had been literally saved by the hero himself. What the innocent girl didn't know was that in front of her stood a group known as PHS, or People Saved by Han Doryong. This acronym originated from Doryong's Fan Cafe, a website where fans could communicate with the idol. The harsh reality was that Park wasn't special. She was just one among many. As she bumped into people and forced her way toward the superhero, a man scolded her for thinking she was the only one there and told her to respect the space of others. Rose's first reaction was to stop and apologize, momentarily giving up on trying to push her way through to avoid getting slapped around for free. Nevertheless, the brave fan had taken a crowded bus next to a construction worker who hadn't used deodorant after a hard day's work to get there, so giving up couldn't be an option. With that in mind, she mustered her courage and resumed her original plan. Ironically, 2 years after that event, Rosa Parks still harbored the same desire to be close to Han Doryong, but this time, with some darker methods to get what she wanted. On the day of that ceremony, under heavy rain, she felt as if she'd been struck by lightning. With the surreal strength that came from it, she threw the man who had scolded her far away, even though that hadn't been her original intention. Honestly, I don't know how the hell she did that by accident. It doesn't seem physically possible for her to hurl the guy without meaning to, but oh well, maybe I don't fully grasp the complexities of her newly awakened power. Just like me, the people around her gaped in shock as the guy flew aimlessly through the air. Sweating from her eyes, little Rosanya had no idea what to do or not do in such a unique situation. Deep down, an irresistible urge to disappear was growing inside her with every second she remained in that unprecedented embarrassment, until her body obeyed the urge and she vanished without a trace. After being flung to Kingdom Come, the special girl landed hard on the green grass of a beautiful field, where her feelings of confusion accumulated until they manifested in a scream. "What is this?" Rosa Parks shouted, her voice rising. "Well, allow me to answer. It's super strength and teleportation. That's what it is. These are our anti-heroine's 2 abilities." And she starts to wonder if she's dreaming, given the sheer confusion in her mind. Of course, considering she had probably killed a family man by turning him into a human frisbee, we can understand her state of insanity. But it wasn't just her physical strength that had increased significantly. For some inexplicable reason, she could now see clearly without her glasses, illustrating the profound transformation her entire body had undergone. At the honor ceremony, Park Rosa sprinted there unintentionally, weaving through the PHS crowd unseen, wearing a blowfish-shaped mask. She was lucky enough to find Doryong, but unlucky enough to see him right in the middle of a fight with another villain wearing a mask. As if that weren't enough, Rosa got hit by the toxic smoke the villain emitted, causing her to vomit up an entire rainbow without hesitation. Clearly, staying close to Doryong was a more dangerous job than being a prison guard, but Rosa never gave up. Equipped with a gas mask now, she felt ready to overcome a new obstacle to be by her beloved side. Not long ago, she had been rejected by an unrequited love, but the bitter lesson from that ordeal might be the path to learning what she needed to avoid making the same mistake again. She had to make it work and wouldn't give up, not even if a car ran her over. In the next panel, she gets hit by a car, but the real victim was the vehicle, which crumpled like a sponge from the impact. To finish the job, she tossed the car far away, not caring if there was a kid inside. That's right, it happened and it's done. Afterward, assessing her health post-accident, her body didn't hurt in the slightest. 2 years later, Park Rosa was the only one who didn't know something was wrong. As a result of her little intervention against the law enforcement agents, the villainess was now the hot topic at the special agents headquarters, and the president called for an emergency meeting about this new S-class threat. Respected by the entire institution, the experienced Choi Gilbey, whose power remains a mystery to us, began crafting a strategy to capture the culprit. By the way, he mentioned that Ki Jungi had shown up today, which was the best decision he could have made, considering he'd be booted if he missed one more meeting. Ki Jungi, another agent whose ability is still unknown, apologized for his previous absence, but lightened the mood by confirming that this time, the number was right. Not paying much attention to that strange remark, the director asked why Jungi hadn't shown up the last time he was called. The young man explained that he had indeed shown up at the crime scene, but turned right back around and left as soon as he saw Sei. After analyzing the situation, he concluded that 2 versus 2 was the perfect symmetry for the case. But then Doryong appeared, and in a strange reaction, Ki Jungi fled out of sheer fear. Because of this, he now had it in his head that he needed to win at all costs. Fed up, Choi dismissed the subordinate from the screen so the meeting could proceed. Returning to the topic, he resumed his talk about the mysterious S-Class special, who had already made a big splash. This was the first S-Class villain to emerge in 52 years, someone so powerful that even Doryong couldn't handle it. Ki Jungi interrupted the president's speech to adjust the projector, which was shaking a bit. Even more exasperated with the kid, Choi rephrased his thoughts once again, eventually concluding that they needed to give this criminal a name. He asked for suggestions, and the crowd raised their hands to throw out some ideas. There was Black Gas Mask, Boring One, Techno Villain, Weirdo, Savage, Smoky Mouth, Cyberpunk Assassin's Creed, Sewer Cleaner. All sorts of ridiculous, tasteless names. None of the names pleased the boss. That's when Doryong suggested Black Mask. But Choi decided to keep the blonde out of the name picking because he had let the villain escape. Moreover, it was clear the villainess was only targeting Doryong. So the president hoped to keep him safe from future incidents by assigning a special team to capture Black Mask, without Doryong's involvement. Outraged, the famous special agent insisted that he was more than capable of solving this case. After all, he wasn't just any old nobody, he was Han Doryong. Nevertheless, his tantrum didn't get him anywhere, so the hero vented his frustration through apathetic sadness. Sei appeared with a Fanta to console the big boy, advising him to take his vacation properly and let people forget about him for a while. After the brief chat, the young idol found himself alone again, reflecting on this fateful event that seemed to have turned everything upside down. Thoughts of worry swirled in his mind. What if I really am the target? What if I lose this fight and put the whole world at risk? What if I quit everything and become an Uber driver in Shichue in the interior of Bahia? Ironically, Doryong felt like he needed to be saved for once, in a rare moment of vulnerability. A long time ago, in a distant memory of his childhood, young Doryong was on the verge of being crushed by the rubble of a collapsing structure. Due to the weight of the concrete and his inexperience with his telekinesis power, the boy knew he wouldn't be able to hold up something so large and heavy, and this hard truth made him give up and brace for the end. However, a man appeared at the last second and obliterated the debris that was about to fall on his head. That mysterious stranger, with his large hoop earrings and a shirt that read love, asked the child if he was hurt after saving him. Deep in his heart, where part of Doryong's childhood still lived, the boy yearned for that person to show up again. But when the Thundercat watch on his wrist chimed, he scolded himself for being weak and donned his uniform once more to return to work. As he liked to remind himself, he wasn't just any special agent. He was Han Doryong, the best. Hours later, on a rainy night, in a bedroom filled with obsessive posters of the country's most famous law enforcement officer, Rosa Parks finished writing her letter addressed to him. As she fantasized about Doryong's possible reactions upon reading her note, Razanya overheard the news report that at around 3 p.m. today, a group of criminals with special abilities appeared at the SY Bank. Earlier that day, the storm was already raging across Korea, where the aforementioned bank was under attack by 2 thugs, taking advantage of the publicized news about Doryong's recent failure against the mysterious villain. One of the men believed the agent wasn't the same anymore, and they could exploit this weakness to pull off a larger crime. On the other hand, his partner didn't share this view, as the fear of being crushed by the cops still weighed heavily on him. Either way, the more confident criminal insisted that this was the perfect time to unleash chaos with his small but powerful explosions, while his partner would contribute with his humble mutations. With that settled, it was time to test their resolve because standing right behind them was none other than the person they were talking about, Han Doryong. He asked who was spreading the rumor that he had grown weaker, and the small explosion guy did his part by trying to blow the cop's face off. However, of course, the blast didn't even mess up the hero's hair, and he mocked the criminals, asking if they really thought they could beat him with such puny abilities. He then announced that running was useless. Doryong was going to catch them all. With that, the agent terrorized the terrorists with the objects in the room he could hurl, until Ki Jungi appeared, asking if Doryong was planning to kill them by any chance. Hearing this question, Doryong came to his senses and apologized for losing his temper. His colleague then took charge of escorting the criminals to the police station. After exiting the bank with the two offenders, Ki Jungi ordered another agent to take them to the police department while Doryong observed the scene with a blank, reflective expression. Inside, he thought there was no more room to show weakness, as his new rival could appear at any moment and exploit his vulnerabilities. And speaking of the devil, Black Mask appeared like an apparition before the special agent, who vowed to arrest her right then and there. Inside that sweaty, tight mask, Rosa Parks wondered what to do, realizing the guy was looking straight at her. Hours earlier, Rosanya had written her letter to the heartthrob, referring to herself as the one he saved, as if the guy didn't have 300 other blessed fans in his DMs saying the exact same thing. But that's the thing. It's easy to send a message, but confronting someone face-to-face is a different story. Clearly, the girl had mustered the courage to show up in person, but her mask hid all the shame and turmoil of her emotions, making Park freeze in the presence of the one she so admired, respected, and wanted to see shirtless. Suddenly, the guy began walking toward the girl, giving her the certainty that this wasn't a dream. After all, the fear she felt from his approach was very real, as was her desperate need to keep her emotions in check at this crucial moment. Adding to Rose's anxiety, people were gathering around the two, becoming spectators of what had the potential to turn into an epic showdown. On one hand, Han Doryong clenched his fists with unrestrained force, expressing his anger toward the opponent who had made him taste bitter defeat. On the other hand, Rosa Parks battled her shyness, preparing to finally confess what she had come to say. And so, after a sudden surge of courage, Rosanya shouted, "I've liked you for 2 years, ever since the day you saved me." At this awkward moment, Doryong froze mid-step, turning into a wax statue as confusion took over his body. Around him, the other special agents mirrored his reaction, sharing the same baffled expression. As Rosa shouted her love for the story's heartthrob, more people gathered around, eager to witness their favorite agent defeat the villainess who had supposedly beaten him. Making it very clear with his thought bubble full of question marks, Doryong was the embodiment of cognitive dysfunction, and so he tried to ease his ignorance by asking what the villain had just said. Apparently, he hadn't heard anything. Meanwhile, Rosa was shouting louder and louder, but the storm made it impossible for anyone to hear, and her voice was muffled by her mask. Ki Jungi ordered the sirens to be turned off to make it easier to hear, while the crowd murmured about what could possibly be happening. Every little detail made it harder for Rosa to get her message across. She also suffered interference from the vehicles passing by, making their usual racket. Not known for having much luck, Rosa Parks had experienced other unlucky days. One afternoon, she had prepared a bouquet of flowers for her famous crush, sneaking through the square to deliver it and pour out all the feelings she had for him. At that moment, Doryong was alone, and Rosanya saw it as her chance to finally accomplish her goal. She shouted for Agent Doryong, who looked back at her with his dazzling beauty. But just as she was about to confess, the girl was run over by a villain spewing fire from her backside, ruining the day. Another time, Park found herself caught in the middle of a shootout as she tried to express her feelings. But the gunfire was louder than she had anticipated, drowning out the moment that could have been so special between the two lovebirds. In another day, more experienced with these sorts of scenarios, she leaped toward the guy to declare her intentions. But a tornado had suddenly formed, sending her flying in a whirlwind of confusion. Literally caught in the eye of the storm, Rosa screamed her feelings in vain, as always. In the 2 years since Doryong had saved her, Rosanya Parks hadn't shaken her reputation as the unluckiest girl around, always thwarted by random events during these crucial moments in her life. Back in the present, we witness yet another attempt by the villainess. But this time, she's more prepared for any BS that might come her way. She now had a plan B, the letter she had written. Moreover, she had learned that it was crucial to control the correct distance to achieve her goal. and with that in mind, she moved swiftly toward Doryong to hand him the letter. However, the agent reacted poorly to this sudden movement and attacked with his power, causing Rosa's letter to fall from her hand. Ki Jungi intervened and ordered Doryong to back off, then put his shape-shifting ability to work. While Rosa lamented her letter being tossed away in the wind, Ki Jungi caught up to the villainess. But as soon as he made contact with her body, both the agent and Rosa were teleported to another location. Meanwhile, the letter fluttered in front of Doryong, who finally noticed the pink envelope. Elsewhere in the city, which like the entire country, was being battered by the heavy rain, Ki Jungi and Rosa Parks suddenly popped into existence without meaning to. The agent remained unfazed, and with a quick move, he managed to cuff one of the villainess's wrists to his own. That way, he could keep her under control while contacting his teammates. However, the man was caught off guard by the surreal brute strength the villainess possessed when she broke the cuffs without any effort and even handed them back to him, which I found to be quite disrespectful, honestly. But in reality, it was the opposite. In the next panel, we discover that the girl's intention was to return the broken item to its owner, all ashamed and with her head down like a guilty child with her tail between her legs. With that, Rosa hurriedly fled, leaving Ki Jungi standing there empty-handed. Back with Doryong, he picked up the letter from the ground, assuming it was what Black Mask had wanted to give him, though the motivation behind it remained a mystery to the cop. Curious, he opened the envelope to see its contents, but Ki Jungi appeared just in time to tell the blonde to burn the thing. Completely lost, Doryong asked how things had gone with Black Mask, and his partner explained that the person was one tough cookie, someone who broke the cuffs and still returned them to the agent, showing that it wasn't worth killing him for nothing. With that said, Ki Jungi instructed the mini-explosion guy to do what he did best to the damn letter. Doryong protested, feeling he needed to read what was inside, but his partner was convinced it could be a death threat or a trap, so he set the note on fire. At that moment, Doryong entered a reflective state, mentally pondering everything he was going through. In fact, he considered that it was quite possible it was a death threat, given that any villain would want him dead. At least, that was the usual trend. However, both the first time and this time, Black Mask could have easily finished off Doryong, but didn't for some reason. And it was this doubt that drove the agent crazy, because it seemed like the villain wanted to say something. Whether he was right or not, the truth was that the letter had already been destroyed, and the chance for communication, for now, had turned to ashes. Written in her best elementary school handwriting, Rosa Parks' letter said that if Doryong hadn't found and saved her, she would have been dead. After being given a second chance at life, all Rosa wanted was to enjoy it to the fullest, inhaling every questionable substance in excess and mingling with strangers without protection as if there were no tomorrow. At the end of the letter, she mentioned being a fan and signed her name below. Now, what was left of the letter lay on the ground in small, burnt pieces of paper that Doryong strained to decipher. Meanwhile, Rosa Parks, finally rid of her stifling mask, assumed a smug posture, imagining that at least her message had been left in the right place. Back with the agents, they were all crying around a perplexed Doryong, their tears blending with the rain in a collective sob fest. Without hesitation, the first thing the young idol did was announce to the president of the Special Agents headquarters that he was resigning from the job. As time passed, the media speculated wildly about the new villain in the spotlight, suggesting that Black Mask had declared war on the agents. While the public trembled in fear over this strange pause, Han Doryong had decided to take in the heat of the moment. Watching these alarmist news reports, a man with hoop earrings was doing squats with a pitifully light dumbbell, ruminating over the name Black Mask mentioned on the TV screen. In another apartment, while watching TV and folding clothes from the clothesline, a young lady mentions to her father that the villain on TV is called Black and is from Class S. So the man wants to know who came up with such an absurdly cliché name for the bad guy. In fact, the nickname Black had been announced by the headquarters of the Special Ability Agents for that criminal who possessed super strength and teleportation. The girl's father gets startled and drops the underwear from his hand. Apparently, the villain's ability leaves the man dumbfounded for some reason, making him feel ill for no apparent reason. His wife rushes to his aid, holding him in her arms with monstrous skill, while the daughter simply watches with a dull expression. Yes, the lady had to abandon the frying pan with the eggs still sizzling to help her husband, who suddenly had a fit out of nowhere. In his wife's arms, he claims that Black is not just some masked person. In fact, he assures that this person has returned, whatever that means. At the same time, as the comic indicates, young people felt uneasy during the delicate moment of an elderly woman ranting about the deplorable state of the world. A man next to the woman tries to calm her down by calling her grandma, which sounds odd coming from a man who apparently is her age. Another old man suddenly appears, encouraging destruction, violence, ignorance, vandalism, and hostility. In the middle of the street, a young woman notices the situation from inside a taxi and wonders what the hell is going on here, while handing her credit card to the driver. Refusing the money, the taxi driver tells the passenger to just get out, and she doesn't understand why. In tears, he explains that it's pointless to accept payment if society as a whole is doomed. The passenger, of course, doesn't get a thing, causing her to spiral into confusion inside the vehicle. You probably share this doubt about what's happening to make everyone act this way, so we're going back 52 years to explain the origins of this madness. Back then, one thing that terrified the population was this person mentioned by the man. Even the police had no satisfactory means of dealing with this threat, and this only served as fuel to feed the social chaos caused by this figure. This person had appeared out of nowhere on an ordinary day, and similarly disappeared without a trace, leaving only questions and unpaid bills at Zay's bar. Only those who lived through it can say how much horror was caused by that sinister presence. Nowadays, this person has turned into some sort of internet legend after so much time has passed, but their name and reputation haven't gone unnoticed by the new generation, nor has the threat this person represented. Even the young, theoretically far from the suffering caused by the physical presence of that figure, believed that their return was imminent. The fear of this being was so palpable that people didn't even have the courage to say their name, which clearly reminds us of Voldemort from Harry Potter, because besides the fear of repeating their name, the appearance of the bum was eerily similar to the wizard's. Go figure. On one hand, it's understandable that the population believes in the return of this individual, but the reality couldn't be further from that. In fact, this person is hiding behind an identity few would imagine. Amidst the social panic, a man was traveling by bus, waiting for the stop at station 000. With his stylishly frightening headgear and his shirt with the word love printed on it, he attracted attention for the least noble reasons you might expect, like the smell of rotting liver mixed with armpit sweat. A fellow passenger on the bus, not being a fan of liver, unintentionally expressed his displeasure, but our favorite anti-hero didn't appreciate the unintentional reaction and called out the guy for a chat. First of all, he ordered the guy to sit down. Since the order wasn't followed right away, the big man had to repeat that it was time to sit down. For crying out loud, it wasn't a complicated command to understand. That's right, big guy. Show some authority to this beta loser. After getting what he wanted, the guy raised his hand to deliver a well-placed slap to the passenger's head when he overheard a conversation about a criminal named Black in another part of the bus. One of the smart Alex was talking freely about the criminal, saying his friend should watch more YouTube because his ignorance about the toughest guy of recent times was pretty embarrassing. Aside from the incredible name, which literally means black, the villain is also known as You Die. If you stop to think about it, in English it would literally mean you die, which is not exactly a great omen, to say the least. At that moment, a sudden skid could be felt by the passengers, and the guy making those sly comments tried to hold on the best way he could. A brilliant way he found was by grabbing onto the big guy's hoodie. Extremely annoyed, the giant made it clear that in civilized society, we should hold on to something else in the bus, not the genitals or headgear of other passengers. At that point, the crowd realized they were standing before You Die and let out an ear-piercing scream. Without shame, they begged for help, promising to behave like angels from now on and not spout nonsense randomly. You Die, on the other hand, asked what's the point of cooking people for no reason. After this brilliant reflection, he told the driver he was getting off. And so, as he exited the bus, it became clear that this individual who terrified society 52 years ago was named You Die. On the other hand, setting aside the nicknames from his violent past, his real name is Diana, a lovely name. His ability? Being a superhuman with extreme style. Hearing that wretched name, Black, the buff old man clenched his bag of vegetables tighter than usual. As far as he remembers, a TV report aired just yesterday about this bum taking over all the headlines. That's when we learn about the worst villain hiding in the crowd. Among his thoughts, he wondered who gave Black that name. But villains don't just live off evil deeds. We all have our personal lives, and You Die was no different. When he got home and took off his sneakers, he announced that Grandma was in the house. And by the way, Grandma is him, in case you're still unsure of that. His granddaughter greeted him with all the love in the world, showering her grandma with affection. Diana, in turn, couldn't have loved her granddaughter more, to the point that he would never allow any living or dead soul from this dimension or others to lay a finger on his precious little grandchild. At 79 years old, Diana had an enviable physique and the stamina to take care of household chores without issue. A legendary criminal, an icon, a star, Diana was the paternal grandmother of Park Rosa. Yes, the young lady who appeared out of nowhere was Rosa, and you didn't even notice. While doing the dishes, Diana tells her granddaughter that something bad happened out there, which is why she's concerned when the girl is putting on her shoes to head out. Rosa explains she's going to school, but this grandma is no different from all the others. Before leaving, you have to eat, period, no excuses. However, Rosa ends up complaining about this impulse, which was the worst decision of the girl's life. Diana begins to lose her temper in an irreparable way, and uses the opportunity to criticize her granddaughter's lack of organization, as the girl's room looked worse than a war zone. But that part wasn't even close to the worst of it. Snooping through her granddaughter's mess, Diana ends up finding a mask we already know belongs to a certain someone. Gradually, the muscular granny pieces together on her own that this accessory is the same one Black uses. Now, to drop the suspense, the truth is that the grandmother didn't even get mad about it. On the contrary, she was happy that her granddaughter was growing up so fast and following the path of a crafty supervillain who causes chaos wherever she goes. However, not everything is about joy, and not everything is about joy for Diana. Another feeling overtook her mind in that fateful moment, a need to go after her granddaughter. Meanwhile, at the Special Abilities headquarters, President Choi Gilbey was tenderly stroking an incredibly beautiful chick. Beyond that, the president was asking the bird how it could be so beautiful, such was his admiration for the animal. In other words, the guy had no idea that things were about to heat up. Simultaneously, wandering through his school, Dorian was trying to avoid drawing attention, but it was simply impossible with the shabby cap he had chosen for the task. In the school's hallways, he was widely recognized by students and staff who had no idea this famous figure would show up, as the boy almost never did. In a conversation with his boss a few days ago about what to do during vacation, Choi had recommended that he return to school as a way to stay committed to his college life until graduation, especially since the boy's grades were fantastic. Now, poor Dorian had to bear the consequences of that decision, as wherever he went, mosquitoes and flies swarmed around with an unbelievable energy to spread the news that the special agent was in the building. Not only was he at school, but as we scroll down this massive comic panel, a female figure stands out at the end of the scene, and this is no coincidence. After all, this was Rosa Parks, the driving force behind this story, who gained strength with every unfolding event. Back at the headquarters of the special agents, where the president was more worried about the bird's looks than anything serious, the poor man suffers a psychological blow when the animal escaped from his hand without a care in the world. But that wasn't all. The bird fled with determination, as we can see from the panel. It's undeniable. What pisses me off is when people act like Dr. Dolittle, thinking they can communicate with animals and form deep connections with them, when in reality, the creature just wants to kill its owner without remorse. Confused by the bird's escape, Choi wasn't just lamenting the loss. In another sense, let's say Diana had appeared before his eyes, expressing how much she missed the president after such a long time apart. Despite the tension in the air, Choi didn't back down, responding that this meeting was as fun as painting with Luxcolor, a joke the old lady thankfully didn't understand. According to her, corruption still exists and is rampant in a capitalist society as unequal as this one. Whether Choi is a communist or not is something we won't know, because his only response to this bombshell is that Diana is still as huge as ever, an irrefutable fact just like what she had stated. Nevertheless, Diana insists that his words are insignificant, which is why she allows herself to be more direct with the officer. Without beating around the bush, she says, "I'm not going to pretend to be black." Choi questions what the hell she means by that. So Diana keeps her blunt honesty at expert level and reveals without hesitation that Black is her granddaughter. The revelation was so bombastic that Rosa Parks herself felt the pressure from far away, causing her to drop her sewage sandwich, which had been lovingly prepared by the least aesthetically minded cook in all of Korea. After the break, Rosa is still reasonably perplexed, but the truth is that there is a much more concrete reason behind her mental confusion. According to the buzz around school, the famous Han Dorian was strutting through the hallways with all his beauty and charm, and Razanya couldn't help but join in the social commotion caused by this fact. The girls said they loved the guy, and the guys said they loved the guy too, but in a totally straight way, mind you. At no point did they think about stripping the hero down and turning him into a super-powered inflatable doll. No, these very straight guys would never think of doing something so not straight like that. Amidst this chaos, all the special agent wanted was to quietly make his way through the school. Even though he knew he was as popular as Cristiano Ronaldo, considering that not even SARS-7 has the ability to fly and levitate people with his supernatural strength. Either way, all Do-ryong wanted was to get out of there as quickly as possible. But people kept approaching him, reminding him that he had saved them from some random scooter accident or a crash landing of a Brazilian Boeing in downtown Sao Paulo. In the middle of this mess, the super agent ended up being shoved and lightly touched someone's hand. Do-ryong looked up to see who the lucky person was, and the spotlight fell on a guy who thought Do-ryong had held his hand in a gesture of love, or worse, in an act of harassment. Confused by the man's bizarre reaction, Do-ryong tried to explain that it was an accident. But no matter how much the hero tried to lead a normal life where people resolve conflicts with a brief conversation, the situation was far more complicated. A crowd was swarming around the poor guy, making his vacation a living hell, as everyone wanted a piece of the most heroic hero in Korea. Meanwhile, Rosa Parks remained calm in the chaos. Well, not entirely. She did want to rub the guy's belly, but after reconsidering her thoughts, she figured it might be better to stay quiet rather than adding to the problem. At the same time, she wondered if it would be a good idea to clear a path through the crowd, granting her and her favorite hero a glorious, uninterrupted meeting. Suddenly, amidst all these reflections, Rosa realized that Do-ryong had looked directly at her, and this certainty sparked an aura around her capable of causing intense cracks in the surrounding glass. This was the power of love in its most primal form, along with a shard of glass that threatened to invade the hallway with its unstoppable energy. Realizing the situation, our hero darted towards Rosa, leaving all the onlookers behind. As the glass exploded wildly around Rosa Parks, the young man was already quick enough to save the day once again, which is something he was born to do, definitely. The shard of glass headed straight for the woman's face, but shattered completely on the ground. However, we discover at this moment that the incident wasn't caused by Rosa Parks. There was an external force influencing the event. After holding Rosanya in a tender embrace, Do-ryong realized the situation had spiraled out of control and pulled out his Thundercats watch. He yelled his name into the device, alerting it that there was an emergency and that it was time to use his abilities. As he saved the people from the debris caused by the strange impact, Do-ryong asked the girl with glasses if she could stand. In that moment, Rosa thought she was on a Tinder date and replied that she could, while brushing her hair behind her ear and trying to explain that she desperately desired the hero's naked body. However, before she could confess, Do-ryong gently evacuated the young woman to the stairs, proving that a job well done requires drastic measures. With that done, he ordered everyone to get out of the building and retrieve the monstrous shard of glass that had started all this mess. Apparently, it wasn't a chemical weapon or some extremely complex device designed by a surreal evil genius, nor was it some carefully crafted contraption developed by a thinking being. Perhaps it was an item used by a donkey, a fool, an imbecile who didn't have the cognitive ability to develop anything even remotely complicated. In fact, it seemed this case was simply a result of good old brute force. That's when Diana appeared, demanding that the phrase brute force be kept in the deepest pits of hell by that metrosexual hero. Without a doubt, Diana guaranteed that her next attack wouldn't just be with her fingers, leaving us to wonder what limbs might be used in such an approach. Choi showed up as if he didn't care and announced that the solution to this mess was to arrest the granddaughter of this villain. Diana, in turn, responded with a question that would make our souls tremble with fear in a way that couldn't be measured by mere mortals. In other words, we'd all be scared out of our wits just hearing the grandma ask, "What did you just say?" The thing is, Choi wasn't fazed by such a threat because he knew he was tough too. So much so that he went on to say they should arrest Diana as well, as a bonus. Faced with this, Diana smiled and commented that the president was too old for such childish threats, which thoroughly confused Choi, as he was the type of 50-year-old who tried to learn the kids' slang to feel young again, despite being a lonely old man who depended on chicks for happiness. When I talk about chicks, I mean the animal, to be clear. Artur, put a picture of the chick on the screen, please. Anyway, Diana extended her massive hand and assured him that everything was fine. Penetrating the wall with her fingers as if it were nothing, she demolished the entire plaster and impressed Choi's chick, which stood erect in response to the situation. Choi asked for a more civil conversation, considering things were getting way too heated, But the truth is, Diana wanted to play hardball with the special agent's president if he didn't shut up. She wasn't in the mood for games today, clearly. Choi warned that civilians would turn into mush if the giant woman threw an entire wall on top of them, to which Diana reminded him that it was his responsibility to stop her. She had nothing to do with it. She wasn't causing any suffering. It was all in her head for sure. Diana wondered if the old man wasn't going to run off and save the rest of his life, so he could keep flirting with fake women in self-help Facebook groups. Meanwhile, the windows of the building shattered and danced furiously under the pressure. Doryong asked a woman to get out before things got even worse, but she really wanted an autograph before leaving. The handsome man apologized, but had to be honest about the gravity of the situation. As Tinky Winky, Dipsy, Lala, and Po would say, it's time to say goodbye, not sign autographs for clueless citizens who get themselves into danger, and then expect heroes to bail them out when they could have easily avoided the problem. So, after shooing the woman away, Doryong looked at us with an absolutely seductive expression, and few of us could resist such overwhelming and captivating charm from this special man. So beautiful, so strong, so charming, so talented, so everything and a bit more. This is Han Doryong, the most handsome and badass guy in the whole story. Getting back on track, the hero reflected that the shard of glass couldn't withstand even a slight touch when he held it and had completely shattered. For that reason, he concluded that Black possessed extremely extreme strength, and that only a being with extremely strong strength could cause such an extreme problem. But it didn't end there. It seemed Black knew where Doryong was, probably because he was publicly exposed in a school that was in no way a hiding place. Honestly, it wasn't hard to figure out. I'm not trying to be smart, I swear. It just seems really obvious to me. The guy should have been vacationing in the Bahamas or in Rocinha, not in a school in Korea. But the worst part is that he felt like he shouldn't have taken this time off, poor guy. He works all year, and when it's time to kick back, he feels guilty for not chasing down criminals. And considering he's the one doing everything in this mess, it seems unfair. Crazy, right? However, the damage was done, and Doryong was once again put to the test without his consent. From there, all he could do was let it go and take the necessary actions. The thing is, not everything goes as planned. And one proof of that is that an entire building was thrown on top of the vacationing hero without warning. He watched the gigantic structure fall like a rotten banana and realized it was the special agent's headquarters, and he wouldn't be able to dodge something that big. At the same time, he reflected that there were people inside who would be flattened like pancakes from the devastating impact. So Doryong tried to hold the thing with his power. Even if he couldn't prevent dozens of people from dying in the building, at least he could heal one or two with his healing power, and that seemed like enough. With no other option, Han Doryong extended his hand and took charge of damage control with his special ability, but a doubt gnawed at his frazzled mind. When the hero is in danger, who will be willing to save him? Will it be Chapel in Colorado? Kratos? Captain Marvel and her friends whose names I forgot because I fell asleep in the theater? Jesus Christ? Or the best option of all, Vladimir Putin riding a bear? Yes, he would love for it to be Vladimir Putin riding a bear, but the reality played a trick on him, as the structure couldn't be held by his individual power. One of the victims who had been in the building corrected their stance to join the fight, adjusting their posture to prevent death from becoming everyone's fate. Rosa Parks, with her scarlet eyes, took the lead and unleashed a powerful punch on the building, hurling it back from where it came, right into the street where some good folks were driving by. Doryong watched the scene with a look of disbelief, while Rosa asked if the guy was okay, reversing the situation where it had been him asking her the same question. Well, the score was now even. What was also even was Doryong's sense of déjà vu after experiencing this traumatic event. The incident threw him back to a memory where Yudai asked if the baby was hurt or injured, just like Rosa was now asking him. But if you want to understand what the hell is going on, please don't rush. Relax and order a cheap snack from Uber Eats, because what we're about to discover will make the hairs on our buttocks stand up like a porcupine under attack from a crocodile. Going back to a particularly returnable return, still in Chapter 1, we must ask ourselves which of us has never experienced a scene similar to this. In a casual family setting, a guy calls out to his mom like he's casually bringing up a small thing, but he hates to sound like Goku from the deep web saying this. He would love for his diaper to be changed. After all, it's been 3 weeks since this little monstrosity, uglier than sin, has accumulated such an obscene amount of poop in his diaper that one whiff of the inside of his rectum could be classified as the practical demonstration of a chemical weapon. His mother grabs the poorly formed demon child and laughs at his inability to express himself clearly. Now, the story has ended. Can you tell me what the moral was? I'll give you 5 seconds to reflect on the answer. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The moral of the story is to eat cement, as taught to us by the eternal Ed Bailu. Just kidding. The point is that dealing with special abilities requires time and training, as we can read in this comic. In Rosa's case, she was extraordinarily clumsy with her special abilities, to the point of being considered a danger to society, as her powers were still at a toddler's level. For this reason, when she faced the secret agents that fateful night, when Sei noted that the villain's aesthetic resembled a low-budget film from the interior of Goya's, Rosa advanced on the loudmouth and grabbed her arm in a way that could easily hurl her miles away, potentially causing irreparable injury to the woman. However, Rosa was not without empathy, which is why she regretted putting the agent's physical integrity at risk. Please abandon your mindless judgment and consider the real truth about Rosa Parks. The poor thing didn't know what she was doing. She just wanted to get closer to Doryong and thought it was a good idea to assault one of his colleagues to achieve her goal. Unfortunately, Doryong didn't react well to this gratuitous hostility and warned the villain that she was in deep trouble with him. But Rosa didn't even respond to the provocation. She was too nervous in front of that masculine voice booming into her eardrums to even understand what he was saying. In her mind, all that was running through Rosa's head was how much more handsome the hero in front of her was than the last time she saw him, especially with that blonde hair that suited him so well. At the same time, her conscience forced her to reconsider these impulsive thoughts about the hunk's appearance, and Rosa thanked God her mind couldn't speak out loud, otherwise she would have been arrested on the spot. Not for attacking Sei, but for mentally harassing another citizen. Anyway, when Doryong touched Park's shoulder that day, she snapped back to reality. Outwardly, her gas mask hid the real expression she wore when feeling that delicious hand on her body. Inwardly, all she wanted was to bask in that angelic presence on Earth, as if he were the ultimate savior of humanity. From that moment on, Rosa imagined in her innocent little head that something was terribly right about all this, but the undeniable reality is only one. Doryong wanted to mess up Park's face with punches. With that said, the comic indicates that the problem lies elsewhere, so don't go anywhere for heaven's sake. In that confusing chaos where people were running back and forth in a disoriented rush, Rosa Parks regretted that she had been in front of Han Doryong and couldn't express the love and admiration she felt for that man. And this gnawed at her conscience with unimaginable intensity, especially considering it was the second time she had been saved by the hunk. Amid the commotion, 2 students were hypothesizing that all the noise was due to exam season, while their colleague claimed she had crammed everything she could into her brain. While those certified nerds were boasting about their above-average intelligence, Rosa could only think about the guy and wasn't ashamed of it. She knelt on the ground for not even being able to say thank you. Suddenly, students were pointing at a place, believing a missile was flying towards them, and everyone ran wildly through the corridors in search of safety. Those who were too lazy to run waited for Doryong to show up, though they didn't know where the hero was. That's when Rosa sprang into action, skidding across the floor to find the perfect position for the rescue. Without the slightest embarrassment, the heroine prepared to turn the situation upside down with the famous punch that had already sent the building back to where it came from, only to ask if Doryong was chill in the middle of the herd. Cool as a cucumber, calm like a cricket. Impressed, Doryong analyzed his savior's face and prepared to ask how this chick was able to pull off something like that. But the crowd rushed back in to give all the credit to Doryong as usual, shouting from the rooftops that the hunk had saved the day once again. In the midst of it all, he grabbed Rosa's hand and pulled her aside. On a bench inside the school, he confessed he didn't know there was someone so badass in the school and felt betrayed for only finding out now. On the other hand, Rosa focused her entire brain on the fact that she was chit-chatting with the most handsome and well-endowed guy around, ignoring whatever he was saying. Doryong asked if Rosa had ever thought about becoming a special agent, but she didn't think she had the right qualities. Using his charm, Doryong remarked that it would be a shame if Rosa didn't take advantage of her talent. Dying of embarrassment, Miss Rosa was left speechless, so Doryong commented that the person responsible for the school attack was black, even though yesterday's disaster hadn't been well publicized and few people knew about the villain. To illustrate his point, Doryong leaned closer to the girl than usual and showed her what he meant. There stood Black, with his gas mask and Sith robe on a tight budget. "It's me," thought Rosa Parks. "Yes, it's you indeed, who would have thought?" Playing dumb, she asked if this was some kind of bad guy, and the agent explained that he was a new special criminal who had left him a letter with the name Rosa Parks. clearly indicating that she was someone Doryong had saved a while back and would have died if it hadn't been for his heroic intervention. For that reason, this person declared herself a fan of the hunk. Knowing that Doryong had read the letter was enough to leave Rosa dumbstruck, but he mistakenly declared that Rosa Park wanted to kill him, adding that the same person had told him to enjoy his brief time left on this plane. Doryong confessed that he had never admitted anything like this before, but the truth was, he was shitting his pants. After all, what would happen if he didn't win this battle? What if he died? People would inevitably suffer, which left the hero unsure of what to do. Rosa bit her tongue, not revealing the truth to the guy, that she was black and that all this mess was because she would love to see the hunk's radish exposed in her home with no extra visitors. Rosa would prefer to be open about this and be hated by Doryong than keep lying, but another part of her just couldn't bear the thought of being loathed by this fine piece of man. In the middle of this reflection, Doryong noticed that Rosa had hurt her face while trying to save him, which he made sure to clarify by nearly devouring the woman without any pertinent reason. For that reason, he apologized and said it was his fault. Although Rosa disagreed, she remained unusually quiet, with a face that looked like she was holding in gas, prompting Doryong to ask what was going through her mind. After all, it wasn't just her insane expression, but also the fact that her nose was bleeding. Nonetheless, no challenge could break her spirit. Just as Rosa was fine after being hit by a car, a little shard of glass wasn't going to make her cry. By the way, one person occupying Rosa's thoughts was Diana, whom Rosa was certain had caused this incident. That wicked granny. Doryong handed the girl a cloth to clean her face and asked how she had managed to arrive at the right spot so quickly for the rescue. But before Rosanya could respond, the hero speculated that she might have used some ability like teleportation, which sent Park into a mental spiral. Going further, Doryong noted that Black also had that ability, prompting Rosa to interrupt before the guy could go into too much detail about that comparison. She claimed she was really fast, so fast, in fact, that her technique was lovingly named Super Rosax because of how quick and pink she was, super and all. Like Sonic, you know? It's like Sonic, seriously. The thing is pure speed, tons of joined-up velocity. Too fast, dude, you see. However, Doryong now wanted to know how Rosa had managed to punch an entire building, but when he acknowledged that hitting a specific point might make the job easier, the girl breathed a sigh of relief at the guy's cluelessness. Setting that aside, he admitted that it had been a long time since he had such an informal and honest conversation with another human being, because when he got home, all he did was kill time on X videos and enjoy Hiroshi Manhwa's genius videos on YouTube. Rosa asked if the guy didn't have a friend or fan to vent his troubles to, and he admitted that it wasn't cool to do that kind of thing with fans, because if he showed any fear, the people who trusted in his abilities would start to get anxious. However, he didn't see Rosa as a fan, or at least didn't see her that way. Man, the guy missed the mark. He remarked that talking with this girl felt comfortable and pleasant at the same time, like the sensation of lying down on a 5-square-meter pillow. Given such sweet talk, Rosa Park decided to keep it a secret that she was the worst fan of all. Struggling, stumbling, but not falling, Rosa asserted that next time something really crazy would happen. But unfortunately, she was interrupted by a phone call. She informed him it was her grandma and walked away. So Doryong figured he had taken up too much of her time, but she tried to explain she would rather stay with him 1,000 times over, especially if he was naked. That would be fantastic. The problem was that this call had completely killed the vibe of the conversation. So the guy ended up saying goodbye, which the girl did in return, albeit reluctantly. Finally, with all his charm and sympathy, Doryong sent Rosa off with a see you later, lifting her into another dimension, where lightning and thunder formed the backdrop of characters with mouths bigger than their heads to illustrate the size of their perplexity at such emotionally moving events in their routine. Just like Rosa's astonishment at hearing that Angel's voice being so gentle and polite with her. A brutish woman forgotten by God. But she wasn't alone in this world. In the background, her grandmother was trying every way possible to get her attention. When the girl screamed wildly in surprise, the old lady was sure her granddaughter had truly lost touch with reality. Rosa proved Diana's point by repeating the word Kia several times, while Diana kept insisting her granddaughter listen to what she had to say. Meanwhile, Han Doryong was hiding under his blanket because of the bizarre terror he felt toward that buff grandma. As he had admitted to a stranger, he was as nervous as a tightly screwed bolt. But thinking now with his empty little head, it had been a huge mistake to make such a revelation to some random person, and this realization about his slip-up caused the guy to joke her out irreversibly, so much so that the dude felt like he was losing it. Let's be honest, no matter how comfortable he felt, blurting out something that huge to someone he didn't know wasn't a smart move, and no one knew that better than the hero himself. Distraught, Han couldn't understand how he had made such a blunder out of nowhere, which is why he remained under his blanket, as if the cozy warmth of the blanket were his mother's womb, where he wished to return so he wouldn't have to deal with the federal disaster he had brought upon himself. With tears in his eyes, he poked his head out from the blanket and realized it had been a long time since he had felt so deeply connected to someone, and that was worthy of thanks to the dear Rosa Parks, the woman who had provided this glorious emotion to Han Dorian. One way or another, this day had turned out to be special for him in a way he never could have imagined. On the other hand, we can be sure the feeling was mutual for Rosanya, who was hugging the poster of her favorite hero with the certainty that he had poured out a deep emotion into her ear for free, without asking for anything in return. Just the heat of the moment, letting his emotions flow in a beautifully spontaneous way. And she had been there to hear things Dorian had never told anyone else.